The late afternoon sun filtered through the glass doors of Hensley's Market, casting a warm glow over the cold tile floors. The air inside carried the weight of a long day. Shoppers moved with purpose, their carts rattling as they grabbed essentials before dinner. Officer Trent Bayless, still clad in his navy blue uniform, entered the store with no urgent mission. His shift had ended, but the badge on his chest kept him in a state of perpetual duty. He intended to pick up a protein bar, maybe a six-pack, and head home. His eyes, however, scanned the aisles with the instinct of someone trained to notice what didn't belong. Near the dairy section, a figure caught his attention. A man, tall, athletic, early 40s, wearing a dark windbreaker zipped halfway up. The man held a phone, his posture still, not pushing a cart or reaching for products. Instead, his gaze subtly tracked the shoppers around him. A glance at a woman by the milk, a flicker toward a couple near the cheese. To Bayless, it was enough to raise suspicion. The officer's boots clicked deliberately as he changed course, bypassing the bakery to approach the man directly. There was no hesitation, no attempt at a casual greeting. Bayless's chest puffed slightly, his steps carrying the weight of authority. He stopped just inside the man's personal space, close enough to the butter display to smell the faint tang of refrigeration. "You with store security?" Bayless asked, his voice sharp, edged with an accusation that hadn't yet been spoken. The man looked up slowly, his expression calm, almost clinical in its neutrality. "No," he replied, his tone even, offering no hint of irritation or deference. Bayless's eyes narrowed. The response was too short, too confident for his liking. He pressed further, his words carrying the cadence of someone used to being obeyed. "You've been standing here a while, watching people, not shopping. You planning to pay for anything?" The man raised an eyebrow, not in defiance, but in mild confusion, as if weighing whether the question deserved a response. He slipped his phone into his back pocket with deliberate care. "Sir, I'm in the middle of something," he said, voice low but firm. "You're interfering." The word landed like a stone in still water, rippling through the air. Bayless's posture stiffened, his hand drifting instinctively toward his duty belt, not reaching for anything specific, but signaling control. "Interfering with what?" he shot back. "You're not law enforcement. I don't see a badge. You're not store staff. And I don't like being lied to." His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the hum of the grocery store, sharp enough to draw attention. A woman stacking apples near the entrance paused, her hands lingering on the fruit. A teenager by the deli whispered to his mother, pointing subtly. A manager behind the customer service counter took a hesitant step forward, unsure whether to intervene. The man, Deshaun Rucker, kept his hands visible, his demeanor unshaken. "My name is Deshaun Rucker, Special Agent, FBI," he said, his words clear and deliberate. "Badge is in my back pocket. I'm not here to talk to you." Bayless didn't blink, his skepticism hardening. He hated being challenged, especially so directly. "Let me see it," he demanded, standing taller, his hand still hovering near his belt. Rucker moved with calculated slowness, retrieving the badge and flipping it open to reveal the FBI seal and his credentials. Bayless gave it a cursory glance, waving it off. "Anybody can carry a fake badge," he said, his tone dismissive. "You think you're the first guy to try that?" Rucker's eyes locked onto Bayless's, still devoid of anger, but carrying a weight that made the air feel heavier. "You need to back up," he said, his voice steady but edged with warning. "You're interfering with a federal surveillance operation. You're about to blow a case we've been building for 6 months. Bayless scoffed, undeterred. "Then you should have let local law enforcement know. A guy lurking by the yogurt, looking suspicious? I'm supposed to just walk by." Rucker's response was immediate, unyielding. "I don't owe you notification. This is federal jurisdiction. Step back." The exchange drew more eyes. A woman across the aisle angled her phone, recording discreetly. A shopper by the produce whispered to another, their voices hushed but curious. The crowd wasn't large, but was growing, their attention shifting from groceries to the unfolding drama. Bayless felt the weight of their gazes, the silent judgment of strangers. A teenager filming from behind a soda, display snorted, the sound barely audible but enough to prick at Bayless's pride. He doubled down, his voice rising slightly. "If you don't have a signed order or someone I can call, I'm detaining you right here." Rucker didn't move, didn't blink. His calm a stark contrast to Bayless's escalating energy. "You really want to go that route?" Rucker asked, his question hanging in the air like a challenge, unanswered but impossible to ignore. The grocery store, once a place of routine, had become a stage, and the tension between the two men was only beginning to unfold. The air in Hensley's market thickened as Officer Trent Bayless stood inches from Deshaun Rucker, his accusation hanging between them like a drawn blade. Rucker's calm declaration, "Special Agent Deshaun Rucker, FBI," landed with quiet authority, but Bayless's skepticism only deepened. His eyes flicked to Rucker's hand as it moved slowly, deliberately toward his back pocket. Rucker retrieved a leather badge holder, flipping it open to reveal the gold FBI shield and his credentials, the laminate catching the fluorescent light above the dairy aisle. The badge was unmistakable, its weight evident even in a glance, but Bayless barely looked at it. His jaw tightened, his posture rigid, as if the badge threatened his control rather than clarified it. "Anybody can carry a fake," he said, voice low but sharp, slicing to the hum of the grocery store. "You think you're the first to try that?" Rucker's expression didn't shift, his eyes steady, assessing Bayless with precision that felt almost surgical. He held the badge a moment longer before closing it and slipping it back into his pocket. "You're making a mistake," he said, his tone even but carrying a gravity that made the nearby shoppers pause. A woman by the milk cooler slowed her reach for a carton, her eyes darting toward the two men. A teenager filming from behind a display of canned goods angled his phone, capturing the exchange. Rucker's voice lowered, not in retreat, but in warning. "You're compromising a federal surveillance operation. 6 months of work. Step back." The words were a command, not a plea, but Bayless's pride wouldn't yield. He stood taller, his hand still hovering near his duty belt, fingers twitching slightly. "You should have notified local law enforcement," he shot back. "A guy standing by the yogurt, watching people, looking suspicious? I'm supposed to ignore that." Rucker's response was immediate, unyielding. "I don't owe you notification. This is federal jurisdiction." His calm was a stark contrast to Bayless's rising agitation, and it drew more attention. The crowd grew subtly, shoppers lingering near the cheese and butter, pretending to browse while their eyes stayed fixed on the confrontation. A manager in a red polo shirt hovered near the customer service counter, his hands clasped, unsure whether to step in. A woman across the aisle held her phone at an angle, recording, her movements discreet but deliberate. The store's routine hum had shifted into something quieter, heavier, as if everyone sensed the stakes rising. Bayless's voice sharpened, cutting through the tension. "If you're FBI, where's your backup? Where's the paperwork? I don't see a team, just you, standing here like you're casing the place." Rucker's eyes narrowed slightly, the first hint of strain in his composure. "You're not listening," he said. "This is a live operation. You're about to blow it." Bayless scoffed, his disbelief audible. "Blow what? You're not even armed." He gestured toward Rucker's windbreaker, noting the absence of a visible holster. Rucker's hands remained visible, his movements deliberate. "I showed you the badge. I told you who I am. You're choosing to escalate." The officer's face flushed, his authority challenged in front of a growing audience. He took a step closer, his boots loud against the tile. "If you don't have a signed order or someone I can call, I'm detaining you right here," he said, his voice carrying a finality that silenced nearby conversations. A kid by the deli whispered to his mother, pointing. A cashier leaned over her register, watching. Rucker didn't flinch, his stance unmoving, but his words grew firmer. "You detain me. You're not just wrong. You're liable for obstructing a federal investigation. Think about that." The warning hung in the air, unanswered, as Bayless's hand twitched near his belt, not reaching for his weapon, but signaling a readiness to assert control. The crowd's attention intensified, phones now openly raised, capturing every word, every gesture. A teenager snickered softly, the sound cutting through the silence like a pin dropping. Bayless's eyes flicked toward the noise, his discomfort growing under the weight of the onlooker's judgment. He felt the shift, The shoppers weren't just watching. They were assessing, recording, forming opinions. Yet he doubled down, his voice rising slightly. You wanted to believe you're running a federal op with no visible backup, no coordination? That's not how it works. Rucker's response was measured, almost weary. That's exactly how it works when you're trying to keep a suspect from bolting. You're making that impossible. The standoff teetered on the edge of something uglier. The dairy aisle no longer just a backdrop, but a stage where authority, ego, and duty collided, with the eyes of Hensley's Market fixed on what would happen next. The tension in Hensley's Market dairy aisle crackled as Officer Trent Bayless faced Special Agent Deshaun Rucker, their standoff drawing a quiet crowd of shoppers. Bayless's demand to detain Rucker hung in the air, his hand still near his duty belt, his authority challenged by Rucker's unyielding calm and FBI badge. The officer's skepticism had hardened into defiance, his voice sharp, dismissing Rucker credentials as a potential fake. Shoppers lingered, phones raised, capturing the exchange, their whispers and glances adding weight to the moment. Just as Bayless leaned forward, ready to escalate, a new presence cut through the aisle like a cold current. Special Agent Sienna Corbin, Rucker's partner, stepped between them, her arrival sudden but deliberate, her sharp eyes locking onto Bayless with precision that silenced his next words. Corbin, shorter than Rucker, wore a slate-gray sweater and dark jeans, her appearance unassuming yet commanding. Her hair was pulled into a tight twist, and her movements carried the ease of someone accustomed to high-stakes environments. She didn't raise her voice, but her tone was surgical, each word chosen for impact. "Officer, you're interfering with federal operation," she said, holding up her badge at chest level, the FBI seal gleaming under the store's lights. "Step back." Bayless blinked, caught off guard by her sudden appearance, his momentum disrupted. He held his ground, his jaw tight, and challenged her. "And you are—" His voice carried a mix of irritation and disbelief, as if her presence only deepened his suspicion of a setup. "Special Agent Sienna Corbin," she replied, her badge still raised, her eyes never leaving his. "Rucker's partner. You've compromised surveillance." Bayless let out a short, forced laugh, his disbelief evident. Two people claiming to be FBI, no coordination with local PD, no visible suspect? You expect me to believe you're both just grocery shopping for justice. His sarcasm drew a muffled snort from a teenager filming nearby, the sound pricking at Bayless's pride. Corbin's expression didn't waver. "No, officer. We expect you to exercise basic protocol and professionalism." The words landed like a slap, precise and unyielding, exposing the flaw in Bayless's approach without raising her voice. She stepped closer, her presence shrinking the space between them. "You profiled a man standing by the yogurt, doing nothing illegal. That's not policing, it's interference." Bayless's face twitched, the sting of her words undeniable. He pointed at Rucker, his voice defensive. He was just standing there, watching people, no cart, no list. Looked like he was casing the place. Corbin's response was immediate, cutting. "You profile all men buying yogurt?" The question hung, sharp and deliberate, drawing a quiet gasp from a shopper nearby. The teenager behind the soda display laughed softly, his phone still recording, and Bayless's eyes darted toward the sound, his discomfort growing under the crowd's scrutiny. Corbin lowered her badge, but not her intensity. "We're tracking someone laundering EBT funds across state lines, using stolen benefits to funnel cash. She was supposed to meet a contact here. Now she's gone, thanks to you." Bayless's defiance faltered, his hand dropping slightly from his belt. He opened his mouth to argue, but Corbin pressed on. "You didn't ask questions. You assumed. You walked in loud, and our suspect walked out quiet." Her words were a scalpel, exposing the cost of his actions. Rucker, still standing by the butter, added, 6 months of work, officer. You just let her slip through." The crowd grew denser, shoppers no longer pretending to browse. A woman with a green bag paused by the cheese, her phone angled discreetly. A father holding a pack of diapers stood frozen, watching. The store manager, in his red polo, took a cautious step closer, his hands raised as if to signal neutrality. Bayless felt the weight of their eyes, their phones, their judgment. He tried to regain control, his voice lower but still defiant. You didn't notify local authorities. How was I supposed to know? Corbin's reply was immediate. You weren't supposed to know. It's called containment. Until you showed up, badge swinging. We had it under control. Bayless's ears burned, his posture sagging slightly, though he tried to mask it. He pointed at Rucker again, grasping for an anchor. I was doing my job. Rucker's voice, steady as ever, cut through. No, you were acting on a hunch. Not a call, not a report. Corbin nodded, her arms crossing. You went in looking for a problem, not a solution. The words landed heavily, and the aisle fell quieter. The crowd's phones capturing every second. Bayless's hand fell fully from his belt, his confidence eroding as the reality of his mistake settled in. The dairy aisle now a mirror reflecting his misstep in front of an audience that wouldn't forget. The dairy aisle of Hensley's Market remained charged. The standoff between Officer Trent Bayless and Special Agents Deshaun Rucker and Sienna Corbin drawing a silent crowd. Bayless's defiance wavered under Corbin's sharp rebuke, her words exposing his rash approach as interference rather than policing. His hand, once hovering near his duty belt, now hung limply, his confidence eroding as the weight of his mistake settled in. Shoppers stood frozen, their phones capturing every tense moment, their whispers and glances amplifying the officer's discomfort. Corbin's revelation about their operation, tracking Trina Delmore, a suspect laundering EBT funds across state lines, hung heavy, underscoring the gravity of Bayless's disruption. Rucker's steady voice added to sting. 6 months of work, officer. You let her slip through. Bayless tried to regain his footing, his voice defensive but less certain. I was doing my job, he said, gesturing toward Rucker. A guy standing there, no cart, watching people. It looked wrong. Corbin's eyes didn't waver. You acted on a hunch, not evidence. That's not protocol, it's ego. Her words cut deeper than Bayless expected, and the crowd's attention tightened the noose. A woman by the cheese display angled her phone, recording discreetly. A father clutching a pack of diapers stood still, his eyes fixed on the scene. The store manager, in his red polo, lingered nearby, hands raised in a gesture of neutrality, hesitant to intervene but clearly uneasy. Corbin pressed on, her tone measured but unrelenting. We were tracking Trina Delmore, a key player in a multi-state fraud scheme. She was meeting a contact here in this store today. Your approach, loud, confrontational, spooked her. She's gone. Bayless's face twitched, a flicker of realization crossing his features. He opened his mouth to argue, but Rucker cut in, his voice calm yet pointed. You didn't ask what I was doing. You assumed I was a threat. That assumption cost us. The words landed like a blow, and Bayless's posture sagged slightly, though he tried to mask it with scowl. The officer grasped for a defense, his voice lower now. You didn't notify local PD. How was I supposed to know? Corbin's response was immediate, her words like a blade. You weren't supposed to know. That's the point of surveillance, containment. You walked in badge first and broke it. Bayless's eyes darted the crowd, their phones now openly recording, their judgment palpable. A teenager by the soda display smirked, his camera steady. A cashier leaned over a register, watching intently. The air felt heavier, the store's routine hum replaced by a tense silence that amplified every word. Bayless tried one last angle, pointing at Rucker. If you're running a federal op, where's your team? Why no heads up? Rucker's reply was steady, unshaken. We don't telegraph live surveillance. We blend in. You made that impossible. Corbin nodded, her arms crossing. You didn't just disrupt our operation. You endangered it. Trina's been moving stolen benefits through fake vendors, turning fraud into clean cash. She was here in your store, and now she's a ghost because you couldn't wait to play hero. The accusation hit Bayless square, his face flushing as he felt the crowd's eyes boring into him. He took a step back, not retreating but creating space, his pride bruised. The manager approached cautiously, his voice tentative. Everything okay here? He asked, eyes bouncing between Bayless's uniform and the agent's badges. Rucker responded, his tone calm but final. We're good. No need for you to get involved. Bayless turned to the manager, seeking an ally. They say they're FBI. You vouch for them. The manager shrugged, palms up. I saw her near the pharmacy earlier, texting. He was here too. No trouble. Didn't buy anything, but didn't cause any. The manager's words offered Bayless no leverage, and his frustration grew. He pulled out a notepad, scribbling Rucker and Corbin's names, his pen moving quickly. I'm filing a report, he said, his voice stiff. Full names, timeline, everything. Corbin raised an eyebrow. You're welcome to. We'll be doing the same. Rucker added, make sure you spell our names right. The crowd's phones kept rolling, capturing Bayless's retreat as he stepped back further, his authority unraveling. A shopper muttered something about profiling, the words barely audible but sharp enough to sting. Bayless spun, searching for the source, but no one met his gaze. The aisle, once a place of routine, had become a stage where his misstep was exposed, the cost of his actions clear. Trina Delmore, their target, had slipped away and the fault was his. The unmarked navy blue SUV sat quietly in Hensley's market parking lot, its tinted windows shielding Special Agents Deshaun Rucker and Sienna Corbin from the fading daylight. The sting of their failed operation lingered, a heavy silence settling between them after Officer Trent Bayless's confrontation disrupted their surveillance. Inside the vehicle, the dashboard was dark, the hum of the engine absent, mirroring the pause in their mission. Corbin tapped her earpiece, her voice low and professional as she reported to their control team. Delta 6, surveillance compromised. Subject likely exited during local interference. A brief crackle followed, then confirmation. Trina Delmore, their target, had slipped out the north entrance at 5:16 p.m., vanishing into the parking lot before they could react. The timeline was damning. Bayless had entered at 5:12, and by 5:14, Trina had paid in cash at register 9 and left. Rucker stared at the storefront, his hands resting on his thighs, his jaw tight with frustration. Months of meticulous work. Tracking Trina across Alabama, Florida, and now North Carolina, setting up stings, coordinating with field offices, logging burner phone pings, had unraveled in minutes. The operation had been airtight. Traffic cams prepped, plate scanners on all exits, a clean ID on Trina's burner phone. They had been 5 minutes from her meeting a contact, a rare face-to-face drop. Bayless's loud approach had shattered that, spooking Trina into her well-practiced escape. Corbin ended her call, her tablet glowing as she logged the incident, her fingers moving with the precision of routine. I hesitated, Rucker said suddenly, his voice low, laced with self-reproach. Not with him, with her. I should have tagged her sooner. Corbin glanced at him, her expression softening but firm. We had her, Deshaun. Both of us. He broke our focus. She tapped the tablet, pulling up a grainy still from the store's security footage. Trina at register 9, rust-orange hoodie, head down, her left foot angled toward the exit as if anticipating movement. She clocked Bayless the second he walked in, Corbin said. Didn't look at us, just saw the uniform and moved. Rucker nodded, his eyes narrowing. Trina's instincts were honed, trained by years inside the system. She didn't run. She blended, paid in cash, used bags from other stores, kept her head just low enough to avoid recognition. Her escape wasn't panic. It was strategy. They discussed her patterns, their voices low but urgent. Trina had surfaced 3 times in as many weeks. Birmingham, Tallahassee, now here. Each time, she moved faster, bolder, deviating just enough to stay ahead. She's no amateur, Rucker said, recalling their first sighting in Birmingham, where she'd spotted a gas station camera and signaled her kids to duck. She only meets when she's got a new buyer or a new way to wash the money. Corbin frowned, her tablet showing Trina's last known alias, Tracy Bynum. Today was different, she said. Face-to-face, fixed location. That's not her usual play. Maybe she's desperate, or maybe she thought we'd lost her trail. Rucker's hands curled into fists, then relaxed. She saw heat and bolted. Bayless didn't even notice her. The irony stung. Bayless had been so focused on Rucker. Trina had become a ghost in the aisle. Corbin's tablet chimed, an alert flashing. Trina's burner phone had pinged at a truck stop 90 miles away, off Highway 74. The agents exchanged a glance, the silence breaking with purpose. "She's still moving," Corbin said, already pulling up a GPS overlay. Rucker leaned forward, his frustration channeling into resolve. "We don't sit on this." Corbin prepped her gear, camera pen, external mic, backup badge, her movement swift but deliberate. Rucker checked his phone, confirming the ping's timestamp. The chase wasn't over, but the weight of the day remained. They had spent months blending into crowds, wearing borrowed clothes, driving rental cars, all to avoid detection. The pressure from their Charlotte field office to deliver before a fiscal review had been relentless. Bayless, with no stake in their case, had undone it all with a single, poorly timed intervention. "He didn't see what he should have seen," Corbin said, her voice quiet but pointed. "He saw guys standing still, not an agent, not a mission." Rucker nodded, his gaze drifting to the butter shelf where it all began. "I'm tired of handling it," he said, the words heavy with unspoken history. Corbin didn't respond, letting the truth sit between them. She returned to her tablet, logging vehicle data from the store's lot, cross-referencing plates Trina might have used. The grind of their job continued, even as the sting of failure lingered. The alert from the truck stop kept them focused, a faint thread of hope in a case that had slipped through their fingers. They weren't done, but the question neither voice loomed. How many more times would someone else's mistake cost them everything? The navy blue SUV sped along Highway 74, its engine a low hum as Special Agents Deshaun Rucker and Sienna Corbin pursued the faint trail of Trina Delmore's burner phone. The ping from a truck stop 90 miles from Hensley's Market had reignited their focus, pulling them from the sting of Officer Trent Bayless's interference. Rucker drove with precision, keeping the speed legal to avoid attention, his hands steady on the wheel. Corbin, in the passenger seat, prepped their gear, camera pen clipped to her jacket, external mic tucked into her collar, backup badge folder stowed in her pocket. The silence between them was calculated, each action deliberate, their minds locked on the task. The truck stop loomed ahead, a cluster of semis and a diner bathed in the glow of neon signs, the scent of diesel and fryer grease lingering in the evening air. They parked off to the side, near a row of vending machines, their vehicle blending into the lot shadows. Rucker adjusted a baseball cap low over his eyes, a small camera pin secured to his shirt. Corbin scanned the diner through the SUV's tinted windows, her tablet glowing with a satellite overlay of the area. The diner's yellow tile floors and brown vinyl booths held a handful of customers, truckers sipping coffee, a waitress sorting receipts, a lone man in a flannel pecking at a sandwich. No sign of Trina. Rucker's phone buzzed, another ping. Trina's burner had moved 5 miles east of the East Crest Motel. "She's testing us," Corbin said, her voice low, eyes narrowing, dropping digital breadcrumbs or setting a trap. Rucker nodded, his gut telling him Trina was close, but her moves were too calculated to be careless. The road to the motel curved through a half-developed stretch of Route 217, flanked by rusting billboards and patchy construction zones. The motel sign flickered, missing its T, casting an uneven glow over the low, rectangular building. 5 doors faced the front lot, 1 truck and 2 sedans parked nearby, their plates unremarkable but suspicious in their ordinariness. Rucker pulled into a spot across the street, angled between empty vending machine bays, and began snapping photos of the vehicles. Corbin's tablet hummed as she logged the plates, her fingers moving swiftly. 1 car bounced back with a temporary tag from Alabama, issued 2 weeks prior. No owner listed. "She's here," Rucker said, his voice a low murmur, certainty settling in his bones. "Or it's bait." Corbin stepped out, approaching the motel's front office, where a young clerk sat watching a reality show on a portable screen. She tapped the glass, flashing her badge when he looked up, his disinterest shifting to mild confusion. "Need a guest list," she said. "Room 3, who's in it?" The clerk fumbled under the desk, pulling out a cheap ledger book. "Tracy Bynum," he mumbled, flipping pages. "Booked an hour ago. Cash." Some guy checked in, said it was for his girl. Corbin pressed description. The clerk shrugged. Didn't see her. She asked about cameras. He shook his head. Not working. She held back a sigh, exchanging a glance with Rucker as they returned to the SUV. Room 3's door was shut, curtains drawn, no sound escaping. Corbin adjusted her mic, eyes locked on the door. If it's her, she's watching, she said. Rucker agreed, his gaze scanning the lot. We don't knock. No warrant, no move. They settled in, watching, their silence heavy with strategy. Trina's patterns replayed in their minds. She moved like a shadow, never reckless, always a step ahead. In Birmingham, she'd dodge a gas station camera. In Tallahassee, she'd switch cars in a strip mall lot. Today, she'd paid cash at Hensley's, slipped out during Bayless's distraction, and now pinged from a motel with no working cameras. This isn't just her, Corbin said, her voice low. It's bigger than a few fake vendors. Rucker nodded, his thoughts circling the same truth. Trina's operation, laundering EBT funds through fake Purdue suppliers, required contacts, buyers, and a network that spanned states. Her boldness, meeting face-to-face, surfacing 3 times in weeks, suggested confidence or desperation. The temporary Alabama tag hinted at her presence, but the lack of cameras and the vague check-in details screamed setup. She knows how we operate, Rucker said, his voice tight. She's reacting, building her moves around our patterns. Corbin's tablet glowed as she logged the scene, noting the truck's make, the sedan's positions, the clerk's ledger. They waited, 30 minutes ticking by, no movement from room 3. We confirm, we back out, Rucker said, his cap low, his camera pin recording. The chase was alive, but Trina's shadow loomed larger, her escape a reminder that she thrived in the cracks of their system, exploiting distractions like Bayless's to vanish into the dusk. The fading light cast long shadows across Hensley's market parking lot as Special Agents Deshaun Rucker and Sienna Corbin sat in their unmarked SUV. Their focus split between the sting of their failed surveillance and the new lead on Trina Delmore's burner phone. The confrontation with Officer Trent Bayless had left a raw edge, his interference costing them a 6-month operation. As Corbin ended a call with the Charlotte field office, coordinating a potential handoff to track Trina's latest ping, a figure approached from the side of the building. Bayless, his swagger gone, walked toward the SUV with a slower gait, his eyes flicking to the ground, his uniform no longer a shield of authority. Rucker straightened, his posture alert but not aggressive, while Corbin pocketed her phone, her sharp eyes locking onto the officer. Bayless stopped a few feet from the vehicle, his voice quieter, stripped of its earlier bravado. Look, I'm not here to argue, he said, his hands raised slightly, palms open. Corbin crossed her arms. Her response clipped. Then don't. Bayless shifted his weight, his discomfort evident. I didn't know, he said, his word halting. I didn't mean to interfere. Rucker's gaze was steady, his tone even but unyielding. You assumed instead of asked. That's where it went wrong. Bayless rubbed the back of his neck, his eyes avoiding theirs. I've been on the force 7 years. I've made stops that felt off. Turned out right. This one, I reacted. Corbin's voice cut through, sharp but controlled. And how many of those felt off, stops started with someone who looked like him? The question landed hard, and Bayless flinched, his silence an admission. He didn't deny it, his shoulders sagging slightly under the weight of her words. Rucker stepped closer, his voice low but firm. You saw me standing still, not breaking a law, not causing trouble. Your first move was confrontation, not conversation. Bayless looked down, his voice barely audible. It didn't feel right. You just watching people. Rucker's response was immediate. I was working. My job is to watch. You didn't look like law enforcement to me either, but I didn't assume you were a threat. Corbin leaned forward, her tone precise. We're not supposed to stand out. Blending in is the job. You made that impossible. Bayless exhaled, his hands now on his hips, his chest rising and falling as he processed their words. I reacted, he repeated, softer, as if trying to convince himself. Rucker's eyes didn't waver. That reaction cost us a suspect we've tracked for 6 months. She's not just stealing benefits. She's part of a network preying on vulnerable communities, laundering EBT funds into cash. She walked because you couldn't stop yourself. Bayless winced, the truth cutting deeper than he was prepared for. "You think I was trying to be a hero?" he asked, his voice strained. Rucker shook his head. "No, you were trying to be right." The words hit like a punch, and Bayless looked away, his jaw tight. Corbin softened just a fraction, her voice still firm but less sharp. "You didn't know, we get that. But you didn't leave space to be wrong. That's the difference." Bayless nodded slowly, his eyes still on the ground, processing the weight of his misstep. "I've got to report this," he said, his voice steadier now. "My supervisor called. Wants a full account, names, timeline, my part in it." Corbin raised an eyebrow, her tone dry. "You planning to leave anything out?" Bayless shook his head. "No, I'll tell it straight. I messed up." Rucker studied him, his expression unreadable. "What bothered me most," he said, "is that you didn't ask why I was there. You saw me and assumed control." Bayless met his gaze, his voice quiet. "I didn't see an agent, honestly." Rucker's reply was calm but piercing. "You saw a threat. I wasn't one." The exchange hung heavy, the silence stretching as Bayless absorbed the truth. He nodded again, slower this time. "I've got work to do," he said. "On myself, I mean." Corbin's response was direct. "You've got a badge. What you do with it after this matters more than what happened today." Bayless looked up, his expression a mix of resolve and unease. "For what it's worth, thanks for not escalating. Either of you, I didn't deserve that." Rucker's voice was steady. "No, you didn't. But we gave it anyway." Bayless turned to leave, his step slow, his posture lacking the confidence he'd carried into the store. As he walked away, Rucker's phone buzzed, a second ping from Trina's burner, now at a truck stop 22 minutes away. The agents exchanged a glance, their focus shifting back to the chase. They had exposed a flaw in Bayless's approach, not for vengeance but for accountability. Trina's trail was still alive, and they weren't done pursuing it, even as the weight of the day's failure lingered. The fallout from the Hensley's market confrontation rippled beyond the dairy aisle, leaving Special Agents Deshaun Rucker and Sienna Corbin to grapple with a failed operation and a broader truth about their work. Days later, a 28-second video surfaced online, shot vertically by a shaky-handed shopper. It captured Rucker's calm professionalism against Officer Trent Bayless's aggressive challenge, their voices measured but tense in front of the butter and eggs. Rucker stood unflinching, never raising his voice, while Bayless pressed, dismissing his FBI badge. The caption read, "This man taught a cop more with silence than some do with a badge." By noon, the clip had surged past 60,000 views, comments flooding in, some praising Rucker's restraint, others decrying Bayless's actions as emblematic of deeper systemic issues. "Why is it always like this?" one wrote. "That brother's strength kept it from turning deadly," said another. The video wasn't cinematic, but its raw truth resonated, amplifying a moment where judgment met professionalism and faltered. In a downtown office, Captain Terrence Ruhlman, Bayless's supervisor, watched the clip on repeat, his expression unreadable. He had already reviewed Bayless's report, a detailed account admitting his misstep, alongside logs from the store security and the agent's statements. The video, now viral, transformed the incident into a public rupture, not just a mistake, but a stark exposure of flawed instincts. Ruhlman initiated an internal investigation, not to punish but to address the breach. Bayless faced no suspension, but he was reassigned to administrative duty, coupled with 3 months of mandatory de-escalation training and sessions with a department psychologist. The measures weren't justice, but they were a step toward accountability, a chance for Bayless to confront what he'd seen in himself that day. Across the city, Rucker sat at his desk, a lukewarm coffee in hand, his screen open to a still of Trina Delmore's burner phone ping. His formal statement for the FBI's internal affairs team was nearly complete, detailing the confrontation and its cost. Corbin entered, setting a flash drive on his desk. "Local news picked it up," she said. "You're a meme now." Rucker didn't smile, his focus split between the lost target and the video's unexpected reach. "I wish it hadn't happened," he said, his voice low. Corbin pulled up a chair, her tone steady. We did our job, quiet, legal, measured. That's what people saw. They sat in silence, not just colleagues, but witnesses to a recurring pattern. A system where assumptions could unravel months of work in seconds. Weeks later, Trina Delmore was arrested in Florence, South Carolina, by local agents building on Rucker and Corbin's groundwork. The grocery store footage, saved by a sharp-eyed security assistant named Dana, proved critical alongside their license plate logs and surveillance angles. Trina carried 4 IDs, 3 burner phones, and a laptop brimming with fraudulent vendor applications. Her operation, disguised as a farm-produce supplier, had laundered over $400,000 in stolen EBT funds. Rucker read the arrest report, a mix of closure and unfinished business, knowing their persistence had paved the way, even if they weren't there for the takedown. The story wasn't about Trina's capture or Bayless's error. It was about the power of restraint, the kind that held firm when challenged by a badge and a hunch. Rucker and Corbin had stood their ground, not with force but with professionalism, their calm a statement louder than any siren. Bayless, forced to confront his reflection, began to see himself clearly, perhaps for the first time. The clip faded from headlines, as such videos do, joining an archive of incidents too frequent to ignore. Yet something shifted in the quiet moments, in the aisles where shoppers lingered a little longer, their phones down but their eyes open. Every encounter, every aisle, became a mirror reflecting choices made under pressure. Rucker and Corbin saw their duty clearly, protecting communities, chasing shadows like Trina, staying measured even when others weren't. Bayless, through training and reflection, began to see his badge not as a hammer, but as a responsibility. The real lesson lay in the pause, the moment where restraint outshone reaction, where knowing who you are outweighed someone else's assumptions. That power, quiet but unshakable, lingered beyond the arrest, beyond the viral clip, in the everyday spaces where judgment and professionalism meet. It was a reminder that change begins not in headlines, but in the choices made when no one's watching, and in the courage to face the mirror when the world demands it. The story of Hensley's Market isn't just about a single moment in a grocery store. It's about the choices we make, the assumptions we challenge, and the power of staying true to who we are, even when the world misreads us. Special Agents Deshaun Rucker and Sienna Corbin showed us what professionalism looks like under pressure, while Officer Trent Bayless faced a mirror that forced him to rethink his approach. Trina Delmore's capture closed one chapter, but the bigger story lives on in the everyday encounters where restraint, accountability, and understanding can shift the narrative. These moments matter, not just in headlines, but in the quiet spaces where change begins. If this story resonated with you, hit that subscribe button to join our community. Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you witnessed a moment like this? How do we move forward? Drop a like if you believe in the power of staying calm and standing firm. And don't miss our next video. Click the bell to stay updated on stories that spark reflection and inspire action. Let's keep talking, keep learning, and keep pushing for a world where every aisle reflects the best of us. See you in the next one.